from birth to burger, industry-led beef supply chain, animal welfare, and sustainability efforts. So to do that, we have a panel discussion today. Kristin Parman is the Vice President of Membership Services at the Livestock Marketing Association. Growing up on a commercial cow-calf operation in southwest Missouri, working with the family livestock trucking company and the local livestock auction market has really given her a well-rounded view of the livestock industry and the importance of seeing an issue or service from the perspective of really all sizes of operations. We also have Debbie Lyons Blythe, is a cattle rancher in the Flint Hills, the beautiful Flint Hills of Kansas. She and her husband, Dwayne, run a registered Angus cow herd as well as a crossbred herd. Their family is a founding member of the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, and Debbie serves as the secretary treasurer for the group. We also have Justin Nelson. Justin is the Vice President of Cattle Procurement for Tyson Foods. He began his career with Tyson in 2002 and has worked in various aspects of the business, from plant management to cattle procurement. So with that, let's welcome them to the stage. I'm going to put this by your chair, Kristin.
All right. Well, good morning. Thank you for the welcome. I'm very pleased to be able to, kind of tee up the conversation for today, give a little bit of background of some of the programs that we're going to be discussing or taking questions on, and I get the honor of introducing the subject matter for Debbie and Justin, two great partners in the industry that we all work together. So really to just paint a picture of where do we all fit. You have the cow-calf sector, the livestock auction market sector, and the packer processors all sitting here in a panel. And it's important to keep in mind that the beef industry is the least vertically integrated of any of the proteins. Each of those steps in the beef life cycle, the supply chain, are working together, contributing to one another to really provide that high quality, safest, highest quality beef product that our consumers can count on and demand. The livestock auction is probably a little appropriate. If we could readjust, I'll sit between Debbie and Justin, because as an auction market, it's our role to be that pivotal point of transfer of ownership, of supply chain, moving livestock, moving cattle as they're sold from the farm and ranch on to the next point, whether that's a stocker or a backgrounder operation, a feedlot, or onto the packer and processor. So it's a collective effort, each step working together to provide high quality beef. The programs that are in existence today all work in unison to provide producer education, research, science-based guidance on a variety of topics to help livestock producers across each point in the chain to make educated decisions that improve the quality of life for the cattle that we're raising and the overall quality of the product that we're creating. I have the honor of serving on the BQA advisory board for the Beef Quality Assurance Program, and there Chase DeCoit with the National BQA Program is also in the audience today. We get to see firsthand the wealth of knowledge that works together with the BQA program, bringing industry experts, veterinary science, research, academia, livestock producers, auction markets, feeders, packers, and processors, all working collectively to create the BQA guidance, the guidelines, the structure, the new tools, the research programs, all to benefit livestock and cattle producers. Program content overview for National BQA is focusing on cattle care, biosecurity, herd health, transportation, record keeping, nutrition, environmental stewardship, worker safety, and emergency action planning. Creating tools, creating educational guidance, creating producer outreach to really improve the operations and benefit the operations at each point in the sector across all of those points. Now, where the auction markets, you might think, well, you don't produce cattle. We're not raising cattle in the auctions. But we also use the Beef Quality Assurance Guidelines. We utilize their guidance for low-stress animal movement theory and apply that to the unique auction environment where we're receiving cattle from multiple different operations, transferring ownership and moving them on to the next point. We have guidelines within our organization at Livestock Marketing Association for our member auctions that focus on low-stress animal movement, cattle care, facility maintenance, employee training and worker safety, and also producer education, because often we're that direct link back to cattle producers. It's reported over 80% of livestock of cattle producers sell at least some of their livestock through the auction. In a year, there are 30 million head of cattle sold at auction, 7 million hogs, 3 million sheep and goats. That's $40 billion worth of livestock transactions in an auction market environment. We're very proud of the diversity of the type of producers that we work with across all types of operations and all scales of operations. The U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef also is this collective organization really focusing on advancing, supporting, and communicating continuous improvement of the beef supply chain. We, as an organization, joined the USRSB because it was a group of educated, very optimistic and leaning in individuals wanting to work together for the overall support of the beef industry. How can we make current operations better? How can we leverage ourselves for where we head next in the life cycle of beef, in the future of our family operations, the future of the U.S. beef industry in a worldwide market? We wanted to be at that table, and we're very proud to be a part of it. As far as multi-stakeholder, when they say multi-stakeholder, they mean it. The variety of organizations and operations, individuals that are all leaning in together for a discussion of sustainability and how we can tell the story of what producers are already doing well, and then also creating opportunities for measurable tools to set them up for opportunities for improvement. The U.S. Roundtable's high priority indicators are really the roadmap for all of the tools that are being created through the Roundtable. Animal health and well-being, efficiency and yield, water resources, land resources, air and greenhouse gas emissions, employee safety and well-being. There's not a one-size-fits-all answer in that list of indicators to apply to a cow-calf operation, a packer, a processor, or an auction market. But developing that toolkit in those areas to help each of our operations find out how we can better situate ourselves for the future is a very valuable opportunity for our industry. So we're ready to take questions. We're excited for the Q&A portion of this. Wanted to give you a little bit of background because everything we're doing is really with the goal of continuing to provide the safest and highest quality beef supply in the world. So I'll have a seat and we'll take questions.
Okay. Is my mic on okay? Can you guys hear me? Everybody hear me okay? And I'm not sure that a picture was appropriate right before lunch.
I know, I do apologize for that.
I was already hungry, and then that is not helping one little bit.
I selected that photo on a day when I skipped lunch, and it was particularly painful.
Just like grocery shopping when you're hungry, I completely get it.
Absolutely.
All right, Debbie, let's start off with you. We talked a little bit about the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef, but as a cattle rancher, why are you a part of this? Why is this so important, not only to your operation, but cattle ranchers as a whole?
Yeah, right. So, the conversation around sustainability has been happening for a very long time. I remember being involved in some conference calls and some information around sustainability 5 or 6 years ago. At that time, it was very top-down. It was very much being pushed from the retail sector down. And I will tell you, frankly, that cattle producers were really not impressed with that. That's not the way to get us on board. So when they first started talking about the roundtable, it's truly a collaboration of all the different segments. And so I sit at the same table and have the same vote, the same power as a McDonald's, Walmart, Tyson, Lopez Foods, all of these different sectors. And Blythe Family Farms is its member, and I have the same vote. So I think that was the first thing that drew me. The other thing that drew me is by being involved in the roundtable and seeing how other sectors are really interested in our product and how they truly want to improve their own sustainability. Boy, that made me sit up and pay attention. So we're not really getting consumer pressure. So how many of you have ever gone to the grocery store and said, okay, where's the sustainable hamburger? Right? That's not what we do. But we get all of the activist pressure, the stakeholder pressure the retailers, and that will force regulations.
Right.
And my opinion about being involved in the roundtable was to maybe help us not go to the level of regulation.
And how do you think those conversations have changed since they brought a rancher like you on board and they truly are getting that grassroots input? How do you feel like the conversations change?
So it's totally different from the original conversation. In fact, I think 85% of the membership is actually at the producer level. So that's either producer organizations or actual cattle ranchers like me. And so we are at the very beginning. The other thing about that is with the different sectors is each sector has been in charge of creating their own ways to measure sustainability among their own sector. So in other words, McDonald's and other retailers, Arby's, Wendy's, there's a lot of them, we're talking about how to measure water sustainability at the retail level. And as a rancher, I may have had some ideas how they should do that, but until we opened it up for public comment, they were in charge of their own measures. And so they are measuring water sustainability in a retail outlet. Well, so when it came then to figure out how we were going to measure things like greenhouse gas emissions at the ranch level, that was pretty tricky. But we pulled in some experts around, whether that was non-government organizations or research facilities, universities, that kind of thing. And we, the cattle ranchers, decided how we're going to measure sustainability for all of those indicators at the rancher level. So it wasn't top down anymore. That, to me, is a tremendous strength and really got me involved and interested to be a part of that conversation.
Yeah, and producers that are in the room, what do you think the biggest changes that maybe they don't realize that they've seen on the producer level but has happened because of these roundtable discussions?
I think the bottom line is we're not so afraid of the word sustainability. Right? So sustainability is a big term, and it seems like a consumer or an activist term. And so when I first say that to cattle ranchers, they're really kind of, they ball up. They're like, no, I'm defensive about that term. But you know what? We've always been focused on sustainability. It's about efficiency. It's about doing better. It's about taking care of the land. That's a rancher. It's about having a transition plan so that my kids and grandkids can take over the operation. We've always wanted to do it better. We've all been focused on doing it better. Now we can measure it. Now we can show what we're doing and also share more ideas.
So we've heard from the rancher's perspective, but Justin, for Tyson Foods, kind of what's your seat at the table like? Kind of what impact have you been providing, and why is it so important that you do have a role in this conversation as well?
Well, from Tyson Foods' perspective, being one of the largest meat producers in not only the U.S. but the world, for us, why we want to have a seat at the table, and I come from a cow-calf background. Obviously, I'm speaking for Tyson today, but it gets everybody, just as stated, a seat at the table to talk about sustainability going forward. Really, for me and Tyson, sustainability is about having a business model that is there 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now that can continue to operate while not only providing the product that is safe to everyone around the world, but that protects our environment, and not only protecting the environment, but protecting the people that produce that product in that environment. That's why we want to be there. And as was stated, everybody throughout the years of animal agriculture, all the way through the packing systems, we have been sustainable or we wouldn't be in business. Today, we're bringing it out to the public and the world about what we're doing. We're talking about our processes, our procedures, and how that is done in our systems. And to your point, we're grading it. And there's third-party auditors in a lot of these systems, and we have audits all the time that come into our packing houses and our processes and monitor what we do. Years ago, it probably wasn't stated or even talked about any of the processes, not only what we do as a packer, but what is done at the ranch level all the way through to the retail level. Now folks are talking about what they're doing. And all of you are proud, no different than us at the packing level, about our business and what we do. It's just being talked about more in the industry, is the way I look at it.
And what do you think has been the biggest challenge for a company like Tyson coming on board with some of these efforts? I mean, what has been the biggest challenge for you?
You know, honestly, I heard it earlier on the panel. You know, everybody's afraid of corporate America. They're afraid of a big company that operates in any entity. And when you break that corporate America down, they're just like us. They're people. They come from those backgrounds. They care about what they do. They're prideful in what they do. They don't have an agenda to do something that is not wanted or safe for the food or ag industry. They're just trying to make a living, feed their family. And when you break a corporate company or a big company like Tyson down, there's just thousands upon thousands of those kind of people that make up that company. So for us, that's probably been the biggest opportunity for us. And honestly, not only sustainability has been a big term, but for me, sustainability, you have to have transparency. And that's been a huge part of not only the roundtable discussions, of having everybody at the table being able to talk about their different entities of the business. Because years ago that wouldn't have happened. Nobody talked to each other. So everybody sits down, they talk about the process, the procedures, the opportunities, and where the industry needs to go to not only be sustainable as a business, but to have that inside look of what the industry does.
You know, and sustainability is such a big term, but, you know, Kristin, how do you measure it? I mean, when you look at it, there's so many different ways you could measure it. So kind of what are the metrics to gauge where we sit?
Sure, and for the auction markets, we really broke it down of where do we have opportunities for influence. We're not raising cattle in our operations. We have possession of them for a short period of time. So our ability to impact greenhouse gas emissions looks very different than the feedlot sector or cow-calf producers. So we focused on water resources. Where can we reduce water waste while still maintaining animal care? As in hot weather, in general conditions, cattle need access to water. So balancing those opportunities for improvement in savings with the impact on the animals themselves. Land resources, how are we working with our manure resources that are a result of having animals in our operations? How are we working with producer partners in the area? And then also measuring our impact on our employees, their safety, the impact that we have on our rural communities surrounding us. All of those tools, and it boils down to a self-assessment level, a second-party assessment level with us as an organization, and constantly seeking opportunities through improvement.
And do you do it because it's the right thing to do, or is there any financial benefit in this?
Well, sustainability as its core does not exist without profitability. So that was one of the things that we had to, with our membership, really get an understanding, is that the fear of that word, that the roundtable understood that all of these different elements had to work together for profitability for the business. Otherwise, there was no future. So it boils down to it's doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do, period, but also because as a business, all of these opportunities for improvement improve our bottom line.
And Debbie, what's your input on that too?
Yeah, I was just going to add, because we do, though, have a measure or part of the definition of sustainability. Frankly, the definition took us a year. With us all sitting around the table, if I were to ask you all how you define sustainability, I think there would probably be a huge variety of your definitions.
Definitely.
So the definition that we all had to agree on, it took us about a year to really get it the way we like it, and I don't have the fancy boardroom terms very well, but the way that I have our definition in my mind and the way that I talk to other cattle ranchers about it is take care of the land, take care of the animals, take care of the people, and make money. Because if you're not making money, you are not a sustainable business. And frankly, when I speak to consumers, and I'm a blogger and an outreach person, when I speak to consumers, that definition resonates. So the first thing we did was agreed on all of that definition and the fact that this sustainability has to be a pre-competitive discussion. So we feel like that is important across the board. There are a lot of cattle ranchers that are not members of the roundtable, but frankly, they'll benefit from this.
Right.
Because it's a pre-competitive idea, and we've got to make everybody feel good and be better about that and get that story out there. But just recently we had the annual membership meeting of the roundtable out in California, and we rolled out the framework, which is what we've been working on for the last 3 years. And that framework is 150 pages about what is sustainability and how are we going to measure sustainability. So now the goal from here on out is figuring out how we're going to get that out to everybody. And one of the ways is through self-assessment that Kristin mentioned. So our encouragement isn't that we're going to then rubber stamp and say, you are sustainable, but you are not. We're not doing that. We're encouraging a self-assessment, which means I would download a questionnaire and I would take that questionnaire based on my ranch today. So do I have a grazing management plan? Does it include management for water? Does it include stocking rate and different questions like that? How does that impact greenhouse gas emissions? So those kind of important measures at my level. At the packing plant level and the processors level, they've had different questions because they're used to audits. Now, if an auditor came to me, I'd be like, yeah, no, you're not. I'm here from the government, I'm here to help. I'm here as an auditor and I'm here to help. Don't even talk to me. So we're not interested in that at the cow-calf level. They have put in questions that are more like audit questions, but still the roundtable is not going to rubber stamp and say, Tyson is sustainable. Cargill is sustainable. They're not going to do that. That is just not what we've decided. I will tell you, though, that we have, at this annual meeting, we rolled out a program in that we will recognize other programs that want to meet our criteria. We did a lot of work. We came up with some really good ways to measure sustainability, and we want people to adopt them. So they can, if they've got a certification program or even just an educational program, they can apply to us and we will help make sure that their program is in alignment with ours, and then we will recognize their program that it meets ours. It's still not a certification, but we will recognize that they are meeting these key sustainability measures that the entire industry has agreed upon.
Yeah, and she segued into you, Justin. I mean, she talked about how your measurements are a little bit different than on the ranching level, but how do you measure sustainability as a company?
Obviously, like I mentioned, we have auditors and government folks in our plants all the time measuring emissions, gas emissions, water usage. And, in our last sustainability report, we came out with water usage reduction and capturing that because, a packing plant uses a ton of water usage. So, to your question, obviously we track that basis, our reduction year over year and how we're capturing that. And I was just in our plant in Dakota City over at the Hides plant here a while ago. And it was interesting to me, which I've known. I worked in a plant in Lexington for several years, but the packing plant world uses a lot of water, but they're very good water management people. We put the water back in nature or in the river systems better than we took it out. We utilize all of that water throughout our processing, harvest, hides, any facility in that plant, and then we purify it, take everything out and put it back better than we took it. So that reduction year over year of not only usage, but tracking how good we are purifying or making that water better than putting it back. That would be one way. Down the road, I think in the next year, we will have a plant that will not emit any emissions. We will capture everything. And that's a few years down the road, but it's in the process where we capture all the gas emissions, steam, everything, and utilize that back into our process. That will be a model for the industry to go forward with.
Well, before we open it up for questions, that's what we want to do next, but before we open it up, you talked about the term sustainability and how if you asked everyone in this room, you probably get several different answers. Well, you know, we know that that's the same on the retail level, right? Their idea of sustainability is totally different than what we see at the farm level. So, what are the biggest misconceptions that you've seen on the retail level when it comes to sustainability, and how have you been able to kind of shape those thoughts and that misinformation to more informed thoughts on what sustainability really means to all of us?
Well, for the auctions, I think at its core, it's been educating the retail sector that maybe it's not necessary to reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of tools that are already working very well. There's a lot of things that livestock producers, that cattle producers are already doing very well. We just maybe haven't told that story in a measurable way, which is what these tools coming out of the roundtable provide us. Making certain that folks understand things like in the auction environment with the Livestock Marketing Association membership, we're working with them on second-party assessment, third-party assessment. They're continually seeking opportunities for improvement and how that affects the quality of cattle as they're moving on to their next stop in the supply chain. It's a matter of doing so because we want to improve the overall value of the livestock sold for our livestock producers and the quality of livestock as they're moving on to the next point in the chain. So for us, it's really been an awareness issue of making sure that people understand, that retailers understand what's already out there and how they can better utilize those existing tools.
I totally agree. You know, one of the things that I've seen too is that the misinformation that's out there. So, you know, we've had the different studies, we've had global numbers put out there and then applied to the United States. So when they talk about that Meatless Monday is a great idea, right? Well, when you apply that in a local way, that's not true. It's not going to make a difference whatsoever. So in other words, when they say 16% of climate change or carbon footprint is due to livestock, and that if you would just cut back on your beef consumption, you can make a tremendous impact. In America, that's not true. So in order to communicate that information, we had to agree on a science-based foundation. And so I think the retailers, we are arming them with good information to know that actually greenhouse gas emissions and those type of things that come from livestock is in America only 2.2%. And so America is really doing a great job. Really, we are the global leader. This is what we learned from the Global Roundtable, had a presentation for us. America is truly the global leader in beef sustainability. And that was an eye-opening experience for a lot of retailers. But on the flip side, I did not realize the pressure that retailers get. And so when I say to someone in the retail industry and say, oh, seriously, those facts are wrong, I feel like that's good enough. It's not. They have that activist pressure and that stockholder pressure. So it's been a two-way learning street. They've learned a lot from us, and I've learned a ton from them.
Justin, anything you want to add before I open it up to the audience?
The only thing I would add to that from the packing sector, exactly what you said. And one way we've done that with sustainability is to be transparent and bring people into our process, open the doors, and show them what we do and how we do it. And to me, seeing is believing, and that's huge.
All right.
Well said.
Over there? Yeah?
So you've been talking a lot about the implications for the beef industry. Does this translate to other animal industries as well, like dairy or poultry?
So dairy is very much involved in this because, as we all know, a lot of beef comes from dairy cows. So absolutely, positively, this does translate, and we've tried to incorporate the dairy industry. You know, this is a group of people that are absolutely involved in the beef industry. If other sectors, and many sectors are dealing with sustainability already, you know, they've got a good consortium of different industries that are working towards sustainability. We're all learning from each other and trying to work through things with each other, but dairy is very much involved with us.
And I would add the Beef Quality Assurance Program, not only do the auction markets utilize that theory and that guidance, but they also work with National Milk in their farm certification program because of that dairy beef supply that's so important to our overall supply chain. So it really is collective throughout the entire beef supply.
Question in the back?
Thank you very much and good morning. I was wondering, anytime we talk about sustainability, there's some ground that should not be put in row crop, it should be put in grass. And so the type of meals and et cetera that we can do is the sustainable protein that we can raise by cows grazing that grass. And do you ever include that in any of your talks, that this ground should not be farmed, we need it in grass, and we want to be able to provide a good, wholesome protein source?
So I guess that's for me because I'm the rancher and I'm the one that's feeding cows. Absolutely, positively, yes. I come from the Flint Hills of Kansas and it's grass country. And there's a lot of land that even if we tore it out and put it into crops, it would not grow good crops. It could not feed the world. And so it's very important that we do talk about grasslands because having cows graze that grass keeps it in the native, the original state that it was in. And some of the grasslands, especially those native grasses in the Flint Hills of Kansas, are sequestering carbon at huge rates, and it should stay grassland. Absolutely.
Yes, and so do we make sure that we convey that when we talk about sustainability? Because I haven't really ever heard that. Debbie, I mean, you and I get it.
Yeah.
And so, but when we talk sustainability, how do you think that we could formulate our talking points on that?
We should have coordinated. You are doing an awesome job at leading me into what I'd love to talk about. Thank you very much. Grass is the key. And so of all of the indicators, the 6 different indicators that we have selected, by the way, we started with 160 things we wanted to measure for sustainability, and we stuck them on the wall, and we voted, and everybody in the whole room was able to really come down to the top 6 things that we're going to measure with the water quality, land resources, all of those kind of things. 3 of those indicators, their question at the cow-calf level is, do you have a grazing management plan? Because if you do, and it's a fairly good plan, then you are impacting water resources, land resources, and air and greenhouse gas emissions. So originally when the ranchers were coming up with that question, we were like, oh man, those retailers are not going to be okay with us asking that one question to hit 3 indicators. We cannot measure one time and hit all of these. And at the end of the discussions, the retailers said, you know what? You can answer all this with one question. So they came right back around and said, do you have a grazing management plan is foundational to making sure that we can hit all of those indicators. Thank you.
Question right here.
Yes.
Hi, thank you for the discussion. I'm a dietitian by training, and so my question returns to a point that Debbie made regarding the sustainability impact of this increased interest in plant-based diets. And so I'd love to turn that over to the panel as a whole and try to find out your perspective on how this conversation will continue, because from where I sit, this is a common question in the clients that I work with. It affects their shopping and cooking habits and then translates into nutrition, of course. So where do you feel this conversation about the sustainability of animal versus plant-based protein and nutrition is headed?
Who wants to start? We'll just work down through the line, but from our perspective, consumers absolutely deserve a choice in their diets, and this is just another choice. But we also believe very strongly that the terms meat and beef need to be set aside from imitation products. Labeling, true, accurate, clear labeling, as has been discussed this morning, is very important, especially in this realm. But we also continue to fall back on the fact that for safety, for health, and for overall quality, we still believe in the value and quality of beef. And I'm curious to hear the answers with the panelists as well. Justin, go ahead.
You know, from the Packer perspective, I don't disagree. You know, everybody needs a choice. In my opinion, personal opinion, folks that go down that path of either plant-based or some other type, soy or even, we'll call it meatless protein approach, those folks probably have something other than a diet in mind when they go to the meat case and buy those products. They are probably folks that, in my opinion, aren't ever going to eat meat for whatever reason other than it's meat. They don't want to see an animal lose its life so they can have protein. On the other side of that, as far as our business model, we are a protein company. So all of you know we do have, we sold our Beyond Meat assets here recently, but we're a protein company and we feed the world. And in doing so, to be able to feed the world, not everybody's going to eat what we provide. We have a huge asset interest in the poultry, turkey, swine, and beef protein business. That is very, very apparent. But we have customers that are not ever going to buy that, or in some parts of the world, they're not going to be able to afford that. Plant-based protein's been around for years. It's not something new. It feels like it to me. It's been reinvented, I guess, for somewhat. And maybe that's just because of social media and how things are done today. And I guess another side of that, I was talking to a food service provider several months ago, and I asked the question to them what they thought of it and what it was doing for their business. And they said, well, our meat business, true meat, protein, is not faltered. It has actually went up or stayed stable. What we're doing is we're bringing more people into our stores, our restaurants, because they have an option. If us four go to a restaurant and I like protein or plant-based protein and these other three don't, and the restaurant I want to go to, they don't because they don't serve that. We don't go. So that particular entity loses all that business. Not just some of it, they lose us as customers. So from a customer base, we will continue to provide what our customer wants. And whether that be NAE, whether it be NHTC, I mean, we have to look at our customer base and what they want. And to answer your question, the conversation going forward on that's going to be derived from the customer, which is for us, food service, retail, and inevitably the consumer. It's always going to be about the consumer. And from a transparency and sustainability process, that has to be driven from the cow-calf sector all the way through. And that's something we need to talk more about, in my opinion, that we are all producing food at the end of the day. Whether we're a rancher, a backgrounder, a feeder, or a packer. We all produce food. We might do it differently at different stages of that game, but at the end of the day, it's about what the consumer wants. And to answer your question, again, I guess, is whatever that is what the conversation will be. Now, we need to educate them correctly about our process, our procedures, and what is reality and not fiction, which there's a lot of fiction in the world today. And not to take away from the panel's discussion earlier about what they buy and how they buy, but I guess for me, that was wonderful. I appreciate all of you, if you're still here, being here. I really appreciated hearing that. But I really think we need to do a better job of educating our consumers on what things mean. And there's a lot of good things out there on social media that they can look at. There's some great people in the industry as far as Temple Grandin. There's glass house projects she did all over the world in all protein packing houses. You can watch, you can learn. There's great people in the industry to talk about what things mean and be more educated.
Kara, just real quick, thank you so much for asking that and providing us that option. As a dietitian, you know the science behind nutrition. I don't. That's not my thing. But to me, it's about real information. It's not about, the rumors, the fads, the crazy things that are happening. It's about the science. And to me, that's why we're providing this information, and that's what it has to be about.
Any more questions out there? Well, we have a few more minutes for questions, but I think, Justin, that segues into, okay, it is all about educating the consumer at the end of the day. And this morning we heard that a lot of them were kind of misinformed on some things. So then when it comes to sustainability, how do we translate this to the consumer level? I mean, how do we educate?
So I have to be careful. I think we have to be really careful about saying educate the consumer, because that says they're stupid. Mm-hmm. They're not. They're voting with their dollars. They know what they want, but it's based on, in my opinion, misinformation. So it's got to be about getting the right information out. Justin needs to do it with his company. I have to do it with my company. Every sector has to be more transparent, more open to answering questions, and give the consumer a level of trust. For me, my involvement with the roundtable is actually about making my job disappear. So if the consumer would say, wow, I feel good about beef, I feel like it is good for the environment and sustainable, then the U.S. Roundtable can disappear. That would be ultimately awesome. So we've got to work towards the outreach, we've got to work about getting that word out, and hopefully provide more true science-based information.
And one thing I think the industry, I guess I don't think, I know, the industry's done a wonderful job of telling a better story. And obviously you have to be transparent enough in your business process, whether it's cow-calf, sale barn, livestock marketing services, or packer, to get to tell a story. There's some great people, a lot of them are here, all of you that do what you do, but there's a lot of great people out in the industry that they want to tell their story. They're proud of what they do, they're proud of what they produce, they're proud of their family, and they want to tell that story because they do a great job, they do it sustainably, they've had to or they wouldn't be in business. They do it safely because they're feeding it to their family, but they're very, very proud of what they do. And they want to tell that story. And we need to allow them to tell that story. And I was at a background yard in Kansas. There was a young man, had 3 children, probably fresh out of college. He ran this background yard. And I wish we could have had a video camera while we were visiting with this young man. We weren't interviewing him. He wasn't prepped for anything. He was talking about what I just mentioned. He's proud of what he does. He's excited about the future of the business. And he's providing a safe product for his family. I loved every bit of talking to him. The best question that he was asked that he answered, and I'll never forget this, he said, what is the best thing or technology you use in your background yard to maintain these calves as they come through and get them ready for a feed yard? And his answer was, it wasn't antibiotics, it wasn't beta agonist, it wasn't anything we've talked a lot about in here today. You know what it was? It was fresh water, it was exercise, and it was animal husbandry. Those are the 3 things he said. That's wonderful to me, because we are going back to that, in my opinion. We've somewhat lost that, in my opinion, because of the way how big things have gotten, per se, and who's running some of this. I can be honest and say that. I deal with these people every day, but that was a great answer.
Kristin, anything you want to add?
Yeah, for the auctions, it's really a matter of accessibility. We have the public that steps in the doors of our auctions on a daily basis. And for us, it's really been a shift of mentality away from the thought that this consumer trend was an East Coast, West Coast thing. No, these conversations are happening in Smithville, Missouri, in Manhattan, Kansas, and Broken Bow, Nebraska. They're happening in rural communities all over the country. And for us, it's really an attitude of tearing down the walls and welcoming folks to come in, learn more about what we do, about what our customers do, answering questions, not being afraid to have that dialogue, and really attacking it at that grassroots level of the misinformation that social media especially can have a tendency to spread, and creating that relationship with the industry as it is truly on a day-to-day basis.
All right, to wrap things up, the theme is a seat at the table. So what is your advice for all of us in the room to have a seat at the table when it comes to animal welfare and sustainability efforts? I threw this on you. I didn't prepare you. So what? Just think about it for a second, and then when you have it, go ahead.
You know, I would say just in the time that we've spent with the roundtable, the work that continues to be done with beef quality assurance throughout multiple steps in the supply chain. It's really engaging folks that are working in those areas. This audience being a mix of production to processing to packers to those that are supporting those industries and beyond. If you're not certain what those existing programs are, this is an opportunity. It's not just a consumer concern of maybe us taking or missing opportunities for better information. we need to be having these conversations. How beneficial is it to reinvent the wheel with a new response to a question that has already been asked, when we can throw resources, throw additional expertise, throw the support into continuing to improve programs that are already established, already being recognized, making each other stronger rather than trying to clamor for what the newest gimmick is going to be.
A seat at the table for me is really simple. I have to go to my board of directors to get my membership fees every year, and that is my 5 children. They're all sitting around the table. They're owners in our ranch, and the membership fees for the U.S. Roundtable for Sustainable Beef are more than any other membership organization that I'm a member of. And so I explained to them how important it is that we are there, that we are representing the interest of ranchers, the people that are working with the cattle every single day. And, you know, they say if you don't vote in an election, you can't complain. Well, I'll tell you what, if you are upset with what an organization is doing, go to their meeting and see what they're really doing. That's some of the criticism I get, and I invite people to meetings. Show up, be a part of it, make sure that what's happening is what needs to be happening.
Justin?
You know, from the Packer side, for sustainability and animal well-being, those are 2 huge words, and they will continue to be that way going forward with the generation that we have today and the generational gap, I will say, back to the farm, back to the ranch, and tell them the right story. And I think that's what we need to do as an industry, is to continue not only from the Packer side, we need to continue to tell our story, be very transparent, live in a glass house, and welcome people into your business, and not have them closed-door discussions. They need to understand our business, how it works, what we do, and how we do it. And like I said earlier, seeing is believing, and most people that I've been on tours with in our facilities or anywhere around the world, they have a whole different mindset after they leave.
And, you know, it's all about respect. So everybody at the table is valued and has respect, and the round table is an absolutely perfect example of that. In fact, packers and processors are typically not appreciated by ranchers like me. And I really, truly appreciate everybody who's involved in the beef value chain, from rancher to clear to consumers. It's very important.
All right, let's give our roundtable a round of applause.